Think about a famous creative person that you deeply admire. Think about their creative works, what they are, and how they present themselves to the universe. Go back to the first time you encountered their creation. What did it make you feel, and what does it mean to you now? Now think about a creative person that you know in your life, someone who just lets their ideas flourish and manifest. Whether at the workplace or at home, on the big projects they undertake, or the small hobbies they're consistently perfecting. Have you wondered how they're consistently creative all the time? What if I told you that there's three things that link your favorite famous creative to your creative friend? But hold that thought for a minute and let us delve deeper into the meaning of creativity. Now, creativity can be defined as the ability to perceive the world in new ways, to find hidden patterns, and to make connections. Creativity can also be described as the act of turning new and imaginative ideas into reality. But really, why is it important? The world that we interact with through our five senses exists because someone out there was creative. All of our modern conveniences, from the telephone to the laptop in your hand, including how this very TEDx event has been made possible in light of a global pandemic, has all been brought about by the creative works of inventors and scientists. Our very existence is the result of scientific and medical advances which came from creative thinkers in those fields. Much of the richness of our lives, art, music, drama, literature, poetry, is a result of artistic creativity. Now, it is no secret that everyday innovations and ideas differ from history making, awe inspiring works that we know today. Internationally recognized experts in the field of creativity research, James C. Kaufman and Ronald A. Beghetto, characterize these different classes of creativity. These were known as big C and little c creativity. Now, big C creativity was described as eminent accomplishments whose clear-cut contributions impacted the field, such as Einstein's theories to physics, Shakespeare's poems and plays to literature, and Beethoven's compositions to music. This class of creativity is also recognized as works that are recognized with prestigious awards such as the Nobel Prize and Pulitzer Award. Little c creativity, however, is classified as everyday innovation resulting from activities performed by non-experts, such as the making of an exciting new dish as an amateur chef, or the amazing new painting you just finished last month. It is the millions of new innovative apps that are being created every day in Silicon Valley. Little c creativity is the works of small incremental breakthroughs that happen all over the world. Before prestigious awards, your favorite famous creative was once just like your creative friend, with innovative ideas, just like you and just like me. But how did that famous creative use their little c creativity to reach the extent of big C creativity? I believe they dwelt in exactly three states of mind. First is the open mind. Now, yes, we have all heard about the open mind. Think outside the box, learn something new. But it's much harder to achieve, and no one really tells us how to leave the box, and there are many obstacles that prevent us from doing so. One of the biggest obstacles that prevent one from having an open mind is a confirmation bias, whereby an individual seeks out new information and new insight, but only accepts that which affirms their already pre-existing assumptions and beliefs. That mental filter leads them to never actually experience any significant change in perspective. You can see how this can pose a problem to anyone trying to use an open mind to be creative. So if learning something new can sometimes be a catch-22, then what should you do? Engage with more people in your creative process. I know some of us here love to be lone creatives, but hear me out. An experiment published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology tasked two student groups with a murder mystery. One group involved students that were well acquainted, had a similar social background, while the second group was exactly the same as the first, except for the addition of a stranger. While the first group reported a positive interactive process where members felt comfortable with each other while discussing their ideas, the second group reported their team process being uncomfortable, and they felt less confident in the decisions they made. However, that second group outperformed the first group by a significant margin. They were twice as successful in every mystery presented to them. And even though that second group experienced frictions and second guessed many more of the ideas than the first group, they were also less likely to fall into a false sense of confidence simply because there was agreement and fluidity in thought. Now let's take a look at the formation of the IBM Executive School, formed by Lewis R. Mowgli, who realized that true success in his executive leaders was hinged on their ability to be creative. And while devising ways to cultivate this creativity within his executives, he found that the fastest way for an individual to be more creative was simply through peer-to-peer interaction with other creative people. You can see that from these two examples, this is why engaging with diverse communities in your field of creativity is the best way to be open-minded. You cannot control the information or perspectives that come from another individual. And if you're working towards a common creative goal, you are less likely to shut them down and simply move on just because their idea is different from yours. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow others to contribute to your creative process, however big or small their contribution will be. Whether it's through a simple brainstorming session in discussion or actually co-creation of the product. You might find that your individual little C creative moments can work together to build something that is worth big C creative. The second mind that allows little C creativity to compound into big C creativity is the resilient mind. Now, resilience is described as the ability to adapt well in the face of diversity. Within the creative process, this is trying over and over and over again. Now, there's stereotyped notions of creativity singularly being a colorful bliss, where ideas for life-changing inventions that we know today simply fell on the inventor's laps. But for many creatives, the journey towards works of big C creativity is not always bliss. Mark Zusak, the man behind the best-selling book, Book Thief, wrote his book 200 times before he garnered success. This means that he accepted 200 defeats and failures in his own literary works before he reached the perfect one. In an interview after his book was finally released, Zusak said, "In 3 years, I must have failed over 1,000 times, but each failure brought me closer to what I needed to write, and for that, I'm grateful." That book exploded in popularity and was on the bestseller list for over 230 weeks. A few years later, that very same book was a major motion picture. The little C creative moments that Mark Zusak experienced when writing this Book Thief bore no magnitude or significance at each singular time. But together, each of these moments built momentum to the big C creative result. He was consistent and resilient enough to keep returning to the drawing table until he finally got the result that he was looking for. Maybe we are all here today sitting on little C creativity that has the potential to become works of big C creativity. Are we putting in the time and being resilient enough to see our ideas through? You might just surprise yourself. If you put more time on that little innovative idea, you could turn it into something big. Last but not least is the reflective mind. This mind is responsible for insights. It is the mind responsible for the aha moment, the aspect of your mind that ponders and thinks about the outcomes of each creative experiment that you embark on. It absorbs the world around it, draws associations between the seemingly unrelated events. The reflective mind is what allowed Archimedes to gently lower himself into water, observe what was happening around him, and as he did so, lead him to discover the physical law of buoyancy. Well, it contributed to the events that led him to discover the physical law of buoyancy. This same state of mind also allowed that famous creative Isaac Newton to be aware enough of his environment that an apple falling to the ground contributed to the events that led to the theory of universal gravity. Now, I'm not saying that every insight happens after a bath or an apple falling to the ground, but take time to observe. The insights you find from what already exists might lead you to create something that does not. But that's not all. One of the key purposes of reflection is iteration as well. While resilience is the ability to get up after falling 100 times, it is reflection that allows the individual to be 100 times more successful than when they first began. After each trial run or in testing out a new idea, step back and think objectively. Document what happened as plainly as it occurred. Work backwards from the outcome, envisioning the events that led up to it. If you have multiple variables working all at once, which one do you think bore the most importance to the result? Applying these questions exercises that reflective mind and ensures that not a single little C creative moment goes to waste. And when you think about it as well, inward reflection is just as important as the outward reflection that I have been describing. An idea or creative process is only as good as the motive, commitment, and passion behind it, the individual who makes it happen. How many of us really take time to think about why we're doing what we're doing? And what makes us happy when we create? What is it about the creative process? What does that idea mean to us, and what could it mean for others? How many of us are evaluating ourselves just as much as the work that we're creating, so that when we do create, it is an expression of our true inner being and not just another checklist in society's long list of do's and don'ts. When you reflect, you create meaning. And when you create meaning, you create value. When you put this all together, you realize that what we call creativity is just a combination of ordinary thinking patterns and habits. That the supposed creative thinking that brings a creative result is really just ordinary thinking used wisely and harnessed well to bring that said creative result. There's no magic potion to that awe-inspiring, history-making creativity that we all know. But we do already have what we need to get there. So the next time you have that little C creative moment, that light that just sparks your mind, well, keep it open. Keep it consistently reflective and keep it consistently resilient. Because in doing so, you're on your way to your big C creativity. And as I've just told you, changing and reshaping the world for generations to come. Thank you.